Hi everyone, I'm Draven. Thank you for coming to see my next video. Today I'm going to be talking about autism and ADHD and what they mean for me. To keep these videos as close to the 10-minute time frame I'm trying to have so I don't lose anyone's interest, this will be a two-part series. Today will be the backstory behind the two. So when I was 7, a lot of my autistic traits really began affecting my life to the point my mother brought me in for a mental health evaluation. I was diagnosed with ADHD and put on Ritalin. My mother said it was the first time I ever acted normal. But at 13, my doctor subscribed to the then accepted but untrue theory that boys could outgrow ADHD. In this, he removed the diagnosis and took me off Ritalin. My symptoms had obviously continued to present themselves. A number of the signs, traits, and symptoms of autism are similar to that of bipolar. My hyperactivity, anxiety, impulsivity, and angry outbursts were mistaken as mania, and at 17, I was misdiagnosed with bipolar type 1, more manic than depressive. I argued against that diagnosis since day one. I knew I didn't experience delusions of grandeur, and while I impulsively spent money, I didn't go on days-long shopping sprees. But one similar marker did stand out: being out of touch with reality. And what do I mean by that? Persons with autism are in our own little world in a way. The Maori word for autism is takiwatanga, which means in their own time and space. As a child, when others would be playing in the playground, I was sitting by the storm drain setting leaves floating down the stream, off in my own little world. But because not much was known about autism at the time, that diagnosis held for 26 years, and the stage was set for the living hell that would become my life. Before I go any further, you're going to hear me, or have heard in my other videos, me mention my processing disability or processing delay on account of my autism. I'll explain what that means. I have a deficit in the amount of time it takes certain pieces of information to process, register, or click in my brain, especially those involving trauma. These are different, however, from repressed memories, as the information will eventually register in my brain and it will eventually process. But that can be days, weeks, months, or even years after the fact. Case in point, I worked fire and EMS for 22 years. Imagine all that I have seen and done in that time span. I did not process a single call that I was on, and here's why. We would run between 22 to 20 calls in a 12 to 24 hour shift. It was commonly known that I'd forget a call as soon as we were finished it. But it was never that I forgot it. It was the fact that that trauma hadn't registered in my brain yet. Throw in my autism processing disability, and each call added to the queue of unprocessed trauma. Put 22 years of that together. When I left fire and EMS last year, with that trauma finally coming to an end, 22 years of calls began registering my brain. It has crippled me to the point I am disabled from working. Just putting in a job application earlier this year was enough to cause me to black out. More, it took me about 4 years to process my best friend's father's passing. I cried for 3 hours straight when it did. And bear in mind, each of the following instances were a traumatic experience for me. And please understand that my conscious mind knew that they were wrong, yet I was literally unable to stop myself from doing them. My brain was imploding from the inside out. My soul was split in two, just as I had mentioned in my separation anxiety video. Throughout my adult life, as mental health began greatly affecting my functionality, I found myself engaged in a number of self-destructive patterns. Until this year, I had cheated on every significant other I had since I was 17. The prefrontal cortex is greatly affected by both ADHD and autism. Among other things, it acts as the brain's braking system, and my brake went straight to the floor. Each time I would cheat, lie, or steal, I was off in my own little world, and it wasn't a passing thought in my brain due to the processing delay I have. Persons with autism generally lack empathy and have the inability to put themselves in the other person's shoes. So I literally had no idea how it would make any of my significant others feel in engaging in that behavior. I've lied for various reasons since early childhood, and we all know that cheating and lying go hand in hand. So too is the same with stealing. I've stolen money and other objects from early childhood. Taking things without asking is actually a clinical marker of ADHD. Again, I was wholly unaware of how my actions would make those affected feel, and with that braking system inoperable, I couldn't stop myself no matter how hard I tried. It's been proven that men with untreated ADHD are often mislabeled as narcissists on account of their emotional dysregulation and cognitive impairments. I would constantly procrastinate, telling others I would do something, yet in true ADHD form, lack the follow-through to do so. It's a running joke that only with ADHD would you procrastinate having to pee until I'm literally about to piss my pants. It's funny, but it's also true. The prefrontal cortex controls executive function, which includes planning and logistics, something that is greatly affected by both autism and ADHD. I had been actively suicidal since the age of 11. Persons with autism have a 66% chance of experiencing suicidal ideations, an alarming 35% have made attempts. Obviously, I was in that 35%. I didn't see myself being alive tomorrow, so saving money or planning for the future wasn't a passing thought in my brain to begin with, let alone with that executive dysfunction. More, my ADHD impulsive spending was costing me tens of thousands of dollars. My autistic brain would hyperfixate on a topic so much that my ADHD brain couldn't shut up for hours, good or bad, even while knowing I was overloading or draining whoever I was speaking to. I've kept many significant others awake at night for hours, hyperfixated on an argument we had, being overly critical of the tiny details of it all. Those cognitive distortions are another trait of autism. In being autistic, I can be incredibly blunt, simply stating the response I felt appropriate given the topic at hand, again, unaware of how it may be received by the other person. In doing so, I was considered rude or disrespectful. My speech disability worsened all this. I would hazard everyone I know personally that I was fully aware that my tone or words could betray my true inner feelings. But when people think you're just an asshole or a narcissist, no one paid that any mind nor gave my warnings its due regard. Persons with autism and ADHD often lack social skills and the ability to properly read another person or situation. With these cognitive distortions, more often than not, I found myself responding to a wholly inaccurate account of what was actually transpiring in front of me. All of that was compounded by the fact that in autism, I am incredibly literal. When an autistic person says literally, we literally mean literally. If you told me that you were so mad at me you could just strangle me, I was literally expecting you to enact physical violence on me. If you said you were talking until you were blue in the face, I would literally check your complexion for proper perfusion. As a practical example, in one relationship we had, we used the phrase, "what's mine is yours," and that I could take what I need. I took that literally, and coupled with ADHD, taking without asking, as I mentioned earlier, I would take anything I pleased without asking, especially if I knew it was something for us that we needed. This was seen for what it actually was. I was stealing from her, and it was part of what cost me that relationship. I drove everyone around me insane, speaking in movie quotes, another sign of autism. Also, to the dismay of others, in my ADHD hyperactivity, I would get the umizoomies, running back and forth doing my hyper-focused tasks while often forgetting necessary things to do that task because of my ADHD, thus necessitating having to run back to wherever else I needed to get it. It was like I was driven by a motor, a clinical marker of ADHD. And in autism, I absolutely had to finish anything I started. If anything, like an emergency call at work, or anyone interrupted that task I had to finish, I would go into what appeared as an angry outburst. These are known as an autistic meltdown. It was never anger, however, it was anxiety and needing to finish said task. Persons with autism pain threshold is significantly higher than that of others. This meant I could work for hours through incredible amounts of pain to complete the autistic task that I had to finish, powered by the ADHD motor, which was empowered by the autistic hyperfocus. In working fire and EMS, I had to lift hundreds of pounds of human body on a daily basis while having a back injury incurred from an at-work injury. Tie in the processing delay, by the time I realized I'm hurt, the damage is not only done, but has been compounded by hours of continuous use. Despite all of this, I have always known and held in my heart that I am a good person. And the only thing I had ever wanted in life was just for people to love or like me. I was constantly trying to recreate myself into someone people liked, even changing my speech pattern, as I mentioned in my first video. Once again, cognitive distortion and misperception of reality comes into play, and in doing so, I would repeatedly and consistently do everything that would have the opposite of my intended effect. I had always wanted to change. I wasn't stupid. I knew the things that I were doing were wrong, but the more I tried to control the uncontrollable, the worse my conditions got. All of this increased my suicidal ideations, because how can a good person consistently and repeatedly do the things that I did? And it was all on account of the underlying conditions I have, tearing me apart from the inside out. Thank you all for coming to the second video. Thank you all for coming to this video. Again, the second video will be about more of present day for the autism and the ADHD. Thank you all so much for the continued love and support in these videos. I've had a lot of people tell me that I inspire them. Well, it's no understatement that all of you inspire me every single day. And I thank you and I love you for that. And I close my video with the same thing that I've said in all of my other videos. If any of you that are watching this is somebody that I have hurt because of all of this, please know that I'm deeply and truly sorry for all of it.